Joining us now, foreign policy expert. You can follow him on Twitter at YatesComms. And he, former head of Radio Free Asia, had advised former VP Dick Cheney as well in the Bush administration. This is his wheelhouse from his undisclosed bunker, traveling bunker, by the way, like Howl's Moving Castle, traveling bunker. And we are always happy to see him. We are grateful for your time, my friend. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. So two big things right off the bat. We got the G20. We got this summit. They're talking about climate. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But Blinken meeting his counterpart within the CCP saying, well, maybe back off Taiwan a little bit. Maybe there's no workaround. It seemed like weak. He was not arguing or making his case from any kind of position of strength. And I got the impression that China just did it for the optic of having engaged in diplomacy and then they brushed him off. Is that what you kind of conclude too?
Yes, pretty much. I get really short patience with the word salad that comes out every time they talk about Taiwan or China for that matter. No living, breathing, sentient American should pay any attention to people saying what was done in the 1970s with regard to U.S. policy. I think we can acknowledge at this point a few things have changed since then. Maybe in China, maybe in the United States, maybe in the world. And it would be a toot sweet time for the people in the State Department to brush off some new lingo for how we talk about what America's policy is towards China and Taiwan. But these communiques, what is a communique? We have to use a French word for a letter? Come on.
Right.
We can basically say these are the
official
statements of the past, but how about Secretary Blinken just say clearly an answer to the question, yes, we are committed to do this. We don't really need further explanation. And when you give more explanation, all it tells the Chinese is, oh, these are their words, but their deeds are going to be soft because they have to already walk it back with all these words.
That's a great point as well, talking to our good friend Stephen Yates. It was amazing to me that because China's not, they're not participating in this summit, G20. They sent some videos and they sent, I think, a video in of Xi Jinping making remarks, which is a first because normally he just kind of refuses to participate. And I would think that what Anthony Blinken and his counterpart were discussing, that would have been the big focus of all of these nations getting together, talking about China, because it's a threat to every one of them. I have a headline here, too, as it relates to China's new not really new, BFF Russia. Russia's having problems now with their energy and gas emissions. So now here you're coming up on winter, temperatures are cold, and now Europe is like, oh boy, now we can't really rely on Russia for the, the steady supply. You think that might be a topic of discussion, but instead, it's climate and the whole man-made global warming, which does not have a census in the scientific community. And everybody takes their private jets. I think 402 private jets were taken from all these dignitaries and world leaders. And it seems like a rich person's exercise at virtue signaling, not actual leadership.
No, I think we can call it what it is. This is a gathering of the uber wealthy that have a really low level of color. And so we have the European and North American elites getting together, trying to make promises that won't affect their bottom line. They apparently have battery-powered jets and cars that get fueled up with magic fairy energy because they don't need fossil fuels to make anything. They're actually against the cleanest form of energy, which is nuclear. So this is a bunch of people who know that they're not really gathering to solve the world's problems. We might as well call it the G-2 or the COP-2 because the two powers that are challenging the stable model for world development are Russia and China. Right. And they've opted out because they know they can, and none of these nitwits are going to do anything about it.
Yeah, they know they don't have to show up. They don't have to do anything. And that's the other thing that really, I was talking to Kane about this before we had you join us for the segment. With all the discussion about zero emissions and Biden was talking about the Paris Accord and that unconstitutional attempt at getting all these states to enter into this treaty, what I don't understand is why China isn't more receptive to that. You would think that Xi Jinping would be going and making this big appeal to all of these leaders about green energy, considering they have the lock on all of the rare earth elements used to manufacture all of this. That would enrich in China and way more than now. And especially now since they're struggling with debt. Why is that? Why don't they make that play?
Yeah, it would be an easy soft power play, as the professorial set would call it, because they can just show up and people would kiss their ring. And even though they are the world's greatest polluter for
Yeah.
the most part, and they have no quality control standards, and they obviously don't care about safety and people, but everyone would basically treat them like royalty and want to hobnob in the hope of future profits and all of that good stuff. But I think that the world is very slow to realize all is not well inside of China. No one knows that more than the Chinese leadership. I don't think that China is as much of a threat today because it's strong. I think it's as much of a threat today because it is weakening and pulling apart. And powers, as they face that pressure, can lash out in irresponsible and unpredictable ways. That's why I think the Chinese Communist Party today is more of a threat. It's interwoven into all that we do economically, entertainment, socially, education, and that's not good for us. And so they don't want to enter the conversation where those things might have to get addressed. We know that when Prince Charles is hosting everyone for a confab on climate, we're not going to be addressing those serious issues. So it would be a freebie for China. But in general, I think they're opting out of trying to step into the limelight to have to take responsibility for reality. I would love to believe it's because we have one brave NBA player that's out there waving the banner. I hope others will join, and maybe they will. But I don't think that's the reason they're not joining. I think that Xi Jinping knows that his house of cards is starting to shake.
I was reading some headlines about how their economy is slowing. Beijing is dealing with a lot of debt. Their rebound from the pandemic is stalling out. They said that the communists are cracking down on surging corporate debt. They kept talking about shifting to an economy based on spending instead of just like building apartments that nobody lives in. I mean, there's all these weird empty structures over there. But now they're stalling out, and that contributes, as you were saying. When they face that pressure, how I mean, because I'm not really sure that there's anything a communist government can do to fix something like that, especially since that this is how they have been for I don't know how many decades now. So where do they go from here, and how bad does this get?
Well, there's an old Chinese saying that goes along the lines of once you get on the tiger, it's hard to get off. And they've been riding a tiger of just punch drunk foreign investment coming in. And when you're just rich in other people's money, that papers over all the contradictions in your own system. Everybody looks good when they've got a lot of other people's money. And when that starts to slow down, like when you poison the world for 2 years and their economies shrink, then that investment starts to slow down a bit. Those big supply chains that I would like to divert away from China, well, they've gone down a little bit because consumerism isn't going at full speed in the United States or other parts of the world. And so once all that money starts to pull back and those supply lines start to slow down a little bit, then the contradictions in their system start to show more. When I started working on China stuff, we thought that if the Chinese economy slowed to 5% or less, it would break the government of China at the time. We're now well below that. And I think it's only being held because of fear of what comes next. And so I think that they're in for a massive reckoning. There isn't a lot they can do, but the Communist Party built this house of cards, pretending that they could have their version of authoritarianism without the freedom and creativity and flexibility of markets. So the only solution for the Chinese people is to open up and be more free. You'll go through the growing pains, but you'll have a more durable economy, a more durable government that sometimes can survive fools like we do in America.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something that you said that stuck out to me too, and this makes perfect sense when you see consumerism slowing and you see their supply and their manufacturing slow in response to that. That really flies in the face of what we've been hearing from the Biden administration. Oh, no, people are purchasing at record amounts. Actually, no. The problem has been, they got stimmy checks, they sat home and they ordered stuff, but not a lot more than normal. I mean, all of that is now falling back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of, of course, we're getting ready to go into the holiday season, but all of the people where we order from, their manufacturing has slowed because nobody's buying. And that's so that what you just said and that fact and what the AP actually is noting really contradicts the Biden administration on that. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, we just have to look at how many small businesses, how many people that were in service jobs, whether they were bartending, bussing tables, doing gig work, whatever, a lot of jobs got squeezed profoundly over the last couple of years and maybe got extinguished. And those kinds of people live in fear of the future. You're going month to month on rent, paycheck to paycheck living. There's just a lot of people that feel that anxiety. I think that's why a lot of independent voters are now not independent voters. They felt the pain and damage of these mandates. I think they're going to vote the other way in the upcoming. And so I think that there's just a lot of a squeeze people have felt. Now, I am, in principle, very pro freedom of choice, but I am very against consumerism. I think people have stepped way beyond their means. It's not healthy for individuals, families, governments, countries, etc. And so I would like to believe it's because we had an awakening of personal responsibility that this is pulled back. But I think it's really driven by fear because our economies have been hit in really dangerous areas, which is the middle class.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of the not poor, it's the people who live on the edge that have to be very careful these days. And that's where consumerism has thrived for decades.
Yes, that's such a great point. Stephen Yates, as always, so appreciate your expertise. Travel safe, my friend. Folks, go follow him at YatesComms. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
Of course, you too.